I'd like to spend some time today looking at the importance of the 70 weeks prophesied to Daniel. We find it in the book of Daniel, chapter 9. I am teaching today from one of the classrooms here at Cedar Hill. I want to use the whiteboard. I know it's not really easy to see. You might have to enlarge the picture on your screen in order to read the whiteboard appropriately, but I need to write down some of these things for you to see. You'll also be able to tell whether or not I shaved today, which of course I did. And we can spend some time together in the Word looking to see about the importance of these 70 weeks. These are so crucial to having a proper understanding of the book of Revelation and the events of the last days. So Daniel chapter number 9, starting in verse 21, Daniel writes, "Yea, while I was speaking in prayer, even the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision at the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, touched me about the time of the evening oblation. And he informed me and talked with me and said, O Daniel, I am now come forth to give thee skill and understanding. At the beginning of thy supplications the commandment came forth, and I come to show thee, for thou art greatly beloved. Therefore understand the matter and consider the vision." Now verse 24, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city, to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the Most High. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem, until the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublous times. And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the Prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. We see this passage, which has been really the backbone and the cornerstone to understanding prophecy. To have a really clear understanding of the book of Revelation is to understand the 70 weeks determined here to Daniel, here in Daniel chapter number 9. And so very quickly, I'm going to try to summarize as much as possible in the short amount of time that we have here today. But clearly in this passage, we can understand that the 70 weeks are 70 periods of 7 years. Every week is a period of 7 years. We have the great position today to be able to look back on this. We know when many of these things were fulfilled. And 483 of these 490 years prophesied about in this passage have already come past. They've already been fulfilled. We're able to have exact dates and dates to determine when these things happen. And so we can look back and see 483 of the 490 years mentioned here already being fulfilled, which puts us at a great advantage. Daniel had no idea. Daniel was just looking forward. These things were going to happen after his death in the years ahead. But here's Daniel sitting in Babylon, sitting in captivity. Gabriel, the archangel, comes from God to Daniel to give him hope. To give hope that God is interested in the nation of Israel. He hasn't forgotten the nation of Israel, and he has a specific schedule he's going to follow to restore and ultimately anoint the Messiah through the nation of Israel. And so we come to Daniel chapter 9, and we see, I wrote on the board here this morning, a week. Every week in this particular passage refers to 7 years. That's 490 years. 490 years that God is going to work, intervene, and be working specifically on the nation of Israel. It begins, 490 years begin with the decree to rebuild Jerusalem. There's several decrees in Scripture, several of them that have to do with rebuilding the temple or rebuilding different portions, but only one has to do with rebuilding Jerusalem itself, the actual walls of Jerusalem, and that's found in Nehemiah chapter 2, verses 1 through 8. When the king of the Persian Empire allows Nehemiah, remember he had sad complexion, he's upset. What do you want, Nehemiah? Nehemiah says, I'm upset because my city's been destroyed. I want to rebuild my city. The king allows him to go back and rebuild it. That's in Nehemiah chapter 2, verses 1 to 8. We don't have to guess on the date of this. We have this date captured not only in Scripture, but we have it captured in the records of the Persian Empire. March the 14th, 445 BC. March 14th, 445 BC. That's very important in understanding the beginning of these period of 70 weeks, again for clarity, this period of 490 years. Scripture then tells us in verse number 25, verse 24, 25, all these things are spelled out, that this period, this first 69 weeks, so the 483 weeks, are going to culminate or are going to end with the Messiah coming. Messiah rode into Jerusalem. We worship that today as Palm Sunday, or recognize that as Palm Sunday. We have a specific date for that, April the 6th, AD 32. April 6th, AD 32. There are 360 days in the prophetic calendar, or the Jewish calendar. The Jewish calendar yet today, 360 days in the Jewish calendar. From March the 14th, 445 BC, until April the 6th, AD 32, is exactly 173,880 days. Divided by 360 is exactly 483 years. 483 years, exactly, specifically, down to the day, 483 years from the day that Jerusalem was decreed to be rebuilt until the day the Messiah rode into Jerusalem. He was revealed as he rode in on the donkey. The palm branches were laid down. People misunderstood why he was coming. They thought he was coming to set up a kingdom right then. Well, he's not. He's coming to set up a kingdom after the last 7 years. They were only 483 years into the 490-year period. And so we find here in Daniel a very clear picture of the fact. And we, in perspective and history today, can look back and see that 483 of the 490 years, or 69 of the 70 weeks, period of 7 years, have been fulfilled. There's a 7-year period for Israel, for the nation of Israel, that hasn't been fulfilled yet. And what did God say he's going to do at the end of these 70 weeks? At the end of these 490 years? What all is he going to do? Well, he said right there in verse number 24. He said, the 70 weeks are determined upon thy people, the Jewish people, he's talking to Daniel, and upon the holy city, to finish the transgression. He's going to avenge sin, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity. We see his judgment being poured out in the tribulation time. And then to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Well, that's clearly the end of the tribulation period. As Jesus Christ sets up his reign in Jerusalem, everlasting righteousness. The Holy One is anointed king upon earth, upon all. And so we have here the culmination of the last week. There's 7 years left. 7 years that God's going to work in the nation of Israel. 7 years left for God to fulfill this prophecy. We believe, we looked at this a little bit last time in our last lesson on the rapture, believe that the church age, remember the veil was rent in twain when Christ hung upon the cross. The age of law was over. The old covenant was over. The new covenant began. The age of grace, the age of the church began when Christ died there on Calvary. Church was instituted at the day of Pentecost there just a couple months later. And we now have the church age. Listen, the tribulation period, that last week, the 484th year, the last 7-year period is going to begin at the rapture. 7-year period for God to work in the nation of Israel. A 7-year period that doesn't have to do with the church. The church is raptured. The church is gone. The church age is over. It's done. But that last year is a year for God to work one more time with the nation of Israel, culminating in him setting up his eternal kingdom upon earth. Understanding this passage in Daniel, critical and crucial to understanding the book of Revelation.